Hi guys, Cliff Olson, Doctor of Audiology and founder of Applied Hearing Solutions in Phoenix, Arizona. And in this video, I'm talking about hearing aid directionality and why it's one of the best ways to hear better in background noise. Coming up. I'm sure it doesn't shock you, but the #1 priority for individuals who have hearing aids is better hearing in background noise. Modern day hearing aids have pretty much solved everything else, from being able to hear someone in a quiet room, understanding soft talkers, hearing better on the telephone, and even hearing the TV better, as long as you have the right hearing aids fit and programmed properly using real ear measurement. However, the one problem that continues to plague individuals with hearing loss is being able to understand speech in a noisy situation. In fact, this is the first thing that individuals notice when they first start to develop a hearing loss. The main reason for this is that most individuals, probably yourself included, start losing your high frequency hearing before you start losing your low frequency hearing. High frequencies are where the consonant sounds of speech reside, and the consonant sounds are what allow your brain to separate speech from background noise. And to add insult to injury, background noise tends to be more low frequency in nature. So if you have good low frequency hearing but bad high frequency hearing, you can hear the noise really well, but you don't have the high frequency consonant sounds to separate out the speech. To combat this, hearing aid manufacturers typically use something called noise reduction to try to reduce the amount of amplification given to the background noise so you can do a better job of understanding speech. The problem is, this does not actually result in a better signal to noise ratio, which means you do not get to understand speech at a higher level of accuracy. Typically, there are only 3 different approaches that you can use to actually understand speech better in a background noise situation. These include matching your hearing loss prescription using real ear measurement, using an assistive listening device like a remote microphone, and using microphone directionality. I will link some additional videos down in the description talking about real ear measurement as well as remote listening devices, but in this video, I want to stay solely focused on microphone directionality. Alright guys, if you're excited to see how microphone directionality can significantly improve your ability to hear in background noise, make sure that you go ahead and give me a like on this video. It really helps out the channel. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel with notifications turned on, go ahead and do that as well, because I publish multiple new videos every single week. That being said, I really appreciate it. Now back to the video. Properly implementing microphone directionality can significantly improve your ability to understand speech in a noisy situation because it allows us to prioritize which direction your hearing aids are picking up sound from. For instance, if you happen to be in a noisy restaurant and you're sitting there with a friend having a conversation, it makes a lot of sense to make sure that the microphones are picking up their voice directly in front of you, but not picking up a bunch of sounds from around you. In order to perform directionality well, you have to have 2 microphones on each of your hearing aids. Whether this is 2 microphones on an in-the-ear device or 2 microphones on a receiver in canal or behind the ear device. The reason that 2 microphones are extremely important is because it has to do with the timing difference between when sounds hit one microphone versus the other microphone, and then sound engineers can start to control the polar pattern of microphone pickup. Now, I do realize that this is probably the first time that you've heard of polar patterns, but don't worry, I'll explain it here in a minute. When you have a hearing aid with 2 microphones, the hearing aid can determine which direction sound is coming from. For instance, your buddy who's in front of you at the restaurant, their voice typically hits the front microphone first, then the back microphone. That tells the hearing aid that that sound is originating from in front of you. Now, if there is a person talking behind you, their voice hits the rear microphone first, then the forward microphone a few milliseconds later. That tells your hearing aid that that sound originated from behind you. The precision of this gets even better when you have 2 microphones on both of your hearing aids, and those hearing aids can communicate back and forth with each other, because if you get a sound that is coming from 45 degrees to your rear, that voice is going to hit one microphone first, then it's going to cross over your head, hit the other microphone to tell your hearing aids which direction that sound is coming from. Once your hearing aids know which direction sounds are coming from, the processing inside of the hearing aid can prioritize whichever sound it wants to. Here's an example of some different polar patterns and what they look like when it comes to microphone directionality and which direction sound is being prioritized from. For example, when it comes to the cardioid pattern, sound coming from the front and the sides is prioritized, but sounds coming from the rear are not. In the shotgun pattern, sounds coming coming from directly in front receive more of the priority, and only a small amount of sound enters the microphones from the sides and the rear, while the omni pattern prioritizes sound from 360 degrees. Of course, when you're in a background noise situation, you almost always want to prioritize the sound that is coming from in front of you and sometimes from your sides, but almost never from behind you. This is why directionality works so well. Once your hearing aids identify what type of environment you are in, it can configure the directional pickup of these microphones in a way that would optimize your hearing ability. How effective is the use of microphone directionality on hearing aids? Well, it depends. When we measure your ability to understand speech in background noise, we're measuring what is called your SNR loss score, otherwise known as your signal-to-noise ratio loss score. Now, I have an entirely different video talking about SNR loss that I will link in the description, but essentially this is the amount of separation that you need of speech from the background noise in decibels before you can understand 50% of what someone is saying to you in a noisy environment. So if you have an SNR loss score of 10 decibels, that means that you need a 10 decibel separation of the speech from the background noise before you can understand 50% of it. And just so you're aware, a 10 decibel separation in signal-to-noise ratio means that speech has to be twice as loud as the background noise. So when using directional microphones, the goal is to get that signal-to-noise ratio loss score to be as low as possible. So the better directionality that you have, the more you improve it. And if you can improve it by enough, you could actually hear the person talking to you in background noise. Now, the rule of thumb with this is that every 1 decibel of improvement created by directional microphones is roughly equivalent to a 10% improvement in speech understanding. Some of the best hearing aids in the world may be able to give you up to a 10 decibel improvement in signal-to-noise ratio using directional microphones, but this typically requires that you use a closed dome. However, most data out there suggests that directional microphones can give you only between 2 and 4 decibels of improvement. Still, when you consider that directional microphones may be able to give you anywhere between 20 and 100% improvement in speech understanding in a background noise situation, that is huge. But you do have to remember that this all depends on how big your signal-to-noise ratio loss score is. If you have an SNR loss score of 20 decibels, and you improve that by 10 decibels, you still need the person talking to you in a noisy situation to be twice as loud as that background noise, and that probably ain't gonna happen. Nevertheless, if your goal is to hear better in a background noise situation, it is highly recommended that you get hearing aids that have really good directional microphones, and you have a hearing care professional who takes the time to set those directional microphones up correctly. And if that isn't enough, you're gonna have to use an assistive listening device to improve that score even more, but that is a topic for a different video.